those two questions are the ones that Carol and I want to be sure we start on by 9:40 to 9:45 at the very latest, because those are the questions that are going to generate the most discussion. So we're going to leave ample time for 1 and 2 today on page 8. The questions before that, we're going to run over a little bit faster. They don't need so much discussion. And then so what we have is video, narrative that we assume you've read. Today we'll read it. Always bring your book to class. And then we'll have discussion questions. And there's another book, a thicker one. This is not required for the class in the sense that we won't go through this, but this is background information. This is good stuff. So I encourage you to see Julie and buy the bigger book because it will enrich your study. Okay? It'll be just great background to the little book. So the little book and the big book. Okay, little book, come with it to class. The big book, get it if you can and read it beforehand because this will really provide more depth. Now, having said that,
because look the same if you're ordering them online.
okay.
So the big book called the study guide and the little one says Bible study. So that's how you differentiate them online.
Okay, got it? It's housekeeping. Okay, then take the sheet I passed out and just look at the side that says introductory lesson supplement. I'm going to do this really fast. Notice the schedule of classes. I'm not going to read through them, but notice the classes go from today all the way to May 17th. And I'm doing this so that you have an overview where we're going. So what you can see by this, if you stay with this through May 17, you will, with all of us, have gone through the Old Testament and will understand it much better. Not that we're going to read the whole thing, okay? But we're going to look at the outline of it. You notice it's one Sunday we don't meet, April 5. There's no class. You notice on that sheet because it's Easter. Okay, who wants to go to class on Easter? We just don't do that here. Okay. Anyway, so you see what January 11th. If you just look at that first one, our redemptive story. What the class is today is an overview of how the Old and New Testaments are one redemptive story. Pointing to Jesus in the Old, looking back to Jesus in the New. But that's what we're looking at today. There's one redemptive story, and then you see through May 17, it just goes through the 18 lessons. There's 18 lessons. By the time we get to May 17, we've been in 18 lessons. Okay? Having said that, I think that's enough housekeeping. I'll look at the time, 10:06. Let's start the video, Jamili, and we'll listen to this, and then we'll proceed. Hope it all works. If it doesn't, we have a plan B. Always have a plan B. And the plan B is if the video doesn't work, then we're going to read the narrative.
Yes. Oops.
One redemptive story. Okay.
It's not working. No, it's not working. It's just here.
Make sure it's loud enough.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's come through here to the TV. It's not. It's coming. So. It's all it's
Becoming through screen.
wait, it's not. It's not. It's not, and then it's all up here. So it's not.
Let's check out audio up there and just see if there's anything we can. Right. Well, open up our audio for a moment and just area, just see, yeah, like.
Oh, the Samsung?
This one?
No, the third that one.
Yeah.
Sense.
Um,
No, it's not.
no.
No.
Get the sound up.
No.
Well, I don't think these work very well,
It's fine.
but those on the.
That one?
Well, so I'll do it while they're doing that. I'll go into the housekeeping. That starts, I'll stop.
No, it's this one. Maybe this. No, no, it's not working.
You can plug it. Oh,
That's right.
These are not very heavy duty, though.
so next week, I will not be here. Kara will teach the class by herself. I have a very special invitation to be with my oldest son for the entire day. And it came out. Okay. So I may be here because may spend Saturday with him or I may spend Sunday with him. It's one of the 2 days. But if it is Sunday that he and I are going to spend together, then I won't be here. And so if it's Saturday, then Carol and I will go. So I bet you all want to know what the special event is with my son, right?
Is it your birthday?
Well, do I dare to share this in church? We were given 2 playoff tickets to the Seahawks.
Uh-oh.
Now, the main thing is I see. Okay, that's the main thing.
Yeah, it is.
But you know what? When that gift was offered to my son and I'm not going to refuse that. So there's the lesson already for today. Family is always priority. Okay, don't neglect family. Anyway, look for me in the stands.
Swear you.
My second son, who's giving us the tickets, said my oldest son, tickets will be on the phone, which makes me nervous. Okay, is this gonna work or it is? Okay, we're ready?
Yes.
Ready to go. Here we go. See what it's doing. This for us today is simply an introduction. We start in earnest next week with creation. She's trying to emphasize that the scriptures, Old and New Testament, are one redemptive story about Jesus. And we're going to complete the Old Testament at the end of May. Next fall, the plan is to go through the New Testament. So that's the plan. So you can see there's work for us to do. Could you turn in your chapter, please, to week one redemptive story? And I'm debating whether to read it or just to highlight it. And I think I'm just going to highlight it. So look at the first sentence. The Old Testament is one redemptive story from Genesis to Malachi. I want to emphasize that point because it's one story. It's a lot of different books, different historical periods, but it's always one story pointing ahead to Jesus. And if you go down the same page, go down about 2/3 of the way, you find the sentence when the Old Testament. When the Old Testament draws to a close, there is no resolution to Israel's sin and their wandering heart. The Old Testament ends without a resolution. And there are 400 years until the New Testament, over twice the history of our country. And so then go over to page 2 and look at that first main paragraph. Let's start, this is a story, and go down to where the italics, unfinished story. We're reminded in the final days of the Old Testament that it is an unfinished story. God's people are waiting for God to act on their behalf. They will have to wait 400 years until Jesus comes. So we are embarked on a journey toward the Old Testament. Stick with us. It's going to require some work. It's going to require pre-reading, but we'll stay with it. Then if you would, turn over to page 6. Page 6. And I'd like to very quickly go over questions 1 and 2. It says, read Matthew 1, verse 1. No, you know what? I'm going to condense 1 and 2. Turn your sheet over. Turn your sheet over. I gave you that outline of the class, okay? What I'd like you to look at is the structure of the Old Testament very quickly, Roman numeral 2. You can divide the Old Testament into 3 categories. Everybody see it on your books, Genesis through Esther. The writings, Job through the Song of Solomon, that includes the Psalms and the Proverbs. And the prophets, which is Isaiah through Malachi. Now that's how the Old Testament is set up. First the historical books, and then it follows the writings, and then it follows the prophets. Now read the next paragraph. They are not in chronological order. The historical books largely are, although 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles parallel the same time frame. The writings are interspersed throughout the historical books, as are the prophets. So what you've got during the historical books, you've got Psalms being written. Now they're occur later in the table of contents. But the Psalms, the Proverbs, Job, Song of Solomon, they occur during the period of the historical books. And then you go to the prophets. The prophets all prophesy during the historical books. So the point is that they're not in chronological order. In other words, follow the middle paragraph. See why it is complicated to read the Old Testament? But there is a sort of simplicity to it. And that is one unified story of redemption through Jesus. To make that underlying simplicity in the completely clear, see how the New Testament begins in Matthew chapter 1, and Matthew just ties right to the Old Testament. Okay, so that's 1 and 2. Carol's going to take us through, if you look at page 7, questions 3, 4, and 5. We're going to talk about 3, 4, and 5 just a little bit. I just want to make sure you understand the introductory course. That's all you must.
Okay, well, now we're going to find out who did their homework. We have told you that we hope you will read ahead. Think about these questions because we all know our time is limited. So have your thoughts ready so you can speak. And Courtney and I like we'll talk if you don't. So get your act together and read them. Question 3 is about books of the Old Testament. Asks about what books of the Old Testament foretell or have to do with Jesus. I'm going to go ahead and read just this one, this Luke verse. Luke 24, 25 to 27. Jesus said to them, "How foolish you are! How long it takes you to believe all that the prophet said." 400 years later, they still didn't get it. Why was anybody surprised? The prophets had foretold all of it. So I'd like us to take a little time here, and I'd like to hear what you have found, or what you know from your previous Bible reading. What books in the Old Testament talk about Jesus? Yes,
The
Grace.
footnote said all of them.
That's a cop-out, Grace.
My head, it was a footnote.
Isaiah.
Thank you. I was wondering when the choir would come up with Isaiah. I also got close and so.
And 53, Isaiah 53 is a chapter that the Jewish people rabbis will not talk on because it's the suffering servant.
Yes, yes. More?
Psalms.
Easy one.
Ezekiel.
Jen?
Were there some references in Ezekiel and Daniel?
Yes. Yes. And Ezekiel has, no, I don't have, I didn't write Ezekiel verses down because I thought that was so obvious. We all know those by heart. But yes, there are references in both Ezekiel and Daniel. Thank you, Jen.
In addition to the prophets, the Psalms also speak of Jesus.
Many of the Psalms, Psalm 22 in particular, talks about it. What else?
Genesis.
Genesis, thank you. Genesis 1:1. The word was with God. The word references Jesus in that verse. Malachi. Okay. Tell us what about Malachi. There's prophecies about Jesus' birth, the virgin birth. You haven't hit all the ones on my list. Not all of the books that reference Jesus are titled prophets. There's Job. Job talks about the Redeemer lives. Why are you sonless? No, I know my Redeemer lives. That's from Job. 2 Samuel. Kingdom will be forever. These kingdoms come and go, but your kingdom will be forever. Any more? You haven't even mentioned my favorite. It's a really short book. I love it because it's easy to read. Micah. Micah foretells a ruler from Bethlehem, little tiny Bethlehem, unimportant Bethlehem. There's still one history book we haven't got. And I don't claim to have a comprehensive list here either, but these are the ones that I have found. Numbers also. That's just a smattering of all of the hints in the Old Testament. Sometimes you have to look for them because they go by really quickly, but there's a lot there. How about John 1:4 talks about the Word, Jesus being present at creation. And then finally, I think in question 5, I'll read the 1 Corinthians verse. Where are my post-it notes when I need them? 1 Corinthians 15, 3 and 4. What I have received, I passed on to you, and it is the most important of all. Here is what it is. This is the bottom line of the whole book that we're going to read. Christ died for our sins, just as Scripture said he would. So that gives us, these are the verses that we look to that point through all of this one redemptive story. The climax, the grand finale is Jesus. But you can't overlook all of the things that come along 400, 800, 1,000 years before that foretell the coming of Jesus. Oh, the Zechariah verse I was frustrated I couldn't find the Zechariah verse that talks about the distress of the people who had crucified Jesus and foretells that they would they pierced him. So that comes up again also. So I think we're going to move on straight.
So I'm going to defend grace. The Old Testament, Jesus is, if he's not explicit, he's implicit in the Old Testament. Because remember the video, it's one unified story, begins in creation, Adam, Moses, David, the kings. 586 B exile, that happened in 586 BC. They were taken into exile in Babylon, and then the temple was destroyed. And again, so the Old Testament ends on that despairing note. But that despairing note means Jesus is coming. So Carol has been very good in pointing out a lot of these explicit references to Jesus in the Old, and you've been very good in identifying them as well. But remember that even the overall story, even if it's not explicit, it's implicit that Jesus is coming, that Jesus is on the way. So one unified story is what this is about. So what I'd like you to do is, in light of what Carol has just said, is take a look at the sheet that I passed out earlier and go to room number 3. And I just want to show you how the testaments tie together here, the Old and the New. Matthew begins his gospel with a genealogy. You guys remember that, right? All the begats, the old King James. Do you know how Matthew structures this, the beginning of his gospel? There's 28 chapters in Matthew. He's the first gospel of 4. He has 3 sets of 14 generations. Verses 1 to 6, he says Abraham through David. Verses 6 to 11, David through Jeconiah, and verses 12 to 16, Jeconiah through Jesus. Now, 3 is a scriptural number for perfection. 7 is a scriptural number for perfection. 14 is twice 7. Matthew is saying that all through the Old Testament, God was guiding in perfection the coming of Jesus through all that Old Testament history. It is one perfect plan of redemption through both Old Testament and New Testament, all under the control of God. The unfinished story of the Old Testament is completed in the New Testament with the birth of Christ. And it's so cool. We use that word when we make it. It is so cool that the very first book of the New Testament, 3 sets of 14 generations till Christ comes. So that what Matthew's saying is that all through that Old Testament, this is where I'm defending grace here, that it's implicit. All through that Old Testament, it's all moving toward Christ under the control of God. God's providence overseeing all of that history until Christ is born. That's how Matthew begins the very first book of the New Testament. Second then. So again, Old Testament to the end of May. Stay with us. Next fall, New Testament. 18 lessons here, 14 in the New Testament. Okay, Carol and I want you to get today this introduction to the Old Testament. We'll dig into it better next week. Dan.
Yeah, I've been ruminating over the question, well, I know when Jesus entered the temple and spoke, we learned he opened the scroll and was reading from the Hebrew scriptures. So this is a long period of time, as we've learned. I'm wondering at what point, well, surely in the early generations, the story was conveyed orally from generation to generation. At what point did they start writing it down? Do we know this? And how much of it was through?
Yes. So your question is when were the scriptures actually written and so forth?
Right.
Yeah. You know what? I don't know. Now there are theories that it began in the Exodus to Babylon, that Genesis was actually written during the exile. It doesn't take anything away from its inspiration. It's what maybe how God used it to ground these people. But otherwise, I'm not sure when the writing actually started. Oh. Okay, so my time, it's 10:40. It's 9:40. This is when we wanted to start these last two discussion questions, but let me stop. Okay, so what we've learned this point about the unity of the Old Testament pointing to Christ. Any other questions or comment at this point? Remember, historical books, writings, which are Psalms, Proverbs, etc., prophets, starting with Isaiah, ending in Malachi. Only the historical books are in chronological order. The writings are all through the historical book. A lot of the Psalms David wrote. Well, that's during the historical period. Okay, that's just an example. Proverbs, Solomon, the period of the kings. So and then the prophets prophesied all through this historical period. So really important to get that in mind, that the chronology breaks down starting with the writings. Okay, but we're going to cover them all. Okay, so Carol is going to take this point on page 8, question 1. Go ahead, Carol. I'll sit in the hot seat.
Well, before we start on this question, I'd like to just point out the timeline. I don't get any sales commission on these. Honestly, price. But what Gordon just been talking about them not being in chronological order, this timeline solves that problem for you, because you can see.
I'm correct.
This is not what I'm thinking about.
That's the New Testament.
That's the New Testament. Old Testament is not in here.
I have one if you want.
Yes, yeah, let me have the whole history. When you first look at it, it's kind of overwhelming because there's a lot of detail. But a big part of that is that here all the prophets are aligned with the kings that they were prophesying with. So it really makes sense of this chronological sequence. So it is quite helpful.
There is a Bible, a chronological Bible, and from beginning to end, it makes totally great sense to read it chronologically.
It's really helpful. Yes.
I just want to say, if you just bought the book on Amazon, or you're at the church, the timeline is available separately on Amazon for $11.95 if you just want to buy the timeline to supplement the book without buying the other supplements.
Right. The book, the timeline is also available at casketempty.com.
Thank
Oh,
Yes. So
Yeah, or on Amazon, as are the pens.
okay. Who among you? How do you watch TV? Who in the room still has cable?
I'm surprised.
How many streaming? Your favorite show that you watched when it first came out, but you didn't see every episode? I'm watching Poldark. When it was new, I loved this episode, but the next Sunday, I'm busy, missed it. So now I can stream it and I can see all the stories in chronological order. It makes so much more sense. And I would offer that as an analogy for reading the Old Testament. When you look at this big picture and see all the steps that lead up to Jesus, it helps everything make so much more sense. So, what was I asking? About going to the beginning of the book.
We're looking at question 1 here on page 8, so that's that.
We realize many of you have not had the book to be able to think about these, but this is what we are hoping you'll do to prepare in the future. As you know, you'll have a calendar of what week is coming up, and you can think about these questions ahead of time. So we won't be springing them to you unprepared. Expect you to be prepared.
When you start at the beginning, you get a clearer picture of the entirety. And I think that it helps it increases your understanding of the story by starting from the beginning.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, rereading it, oh, sorry.
Who's talking back there? Chris.
Rereading, something from the beginning after you finished it, you realize these details at the very beginning are really important sometimes. So that you see the full picture from the beginning, how these details are built upon.
That's a great point, because sometimes when the first reading, you don't know what details are important. But when you go back after seeing the end, you can see that. I think that context helps. We get in the bad habit of picking a verse here and a verse there. And so what we're hoping to accomplish through the next 18 weeks with you all is to get those little pieces related to each other. Create this one redemptive story. Where do you think we can go?
Okay. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, so yeah, Downton Abbey, right? Yeah. Who's Downton Abbey fans in here? Not too many. Cheryl and I watched it religiously. I shouldn't use that. But Downton Abbey, you want to know the beginning to understand the whole thing, and that's the point Carol's making here. And that's what this course is about, to get the whole flow of the picture. And just give an example. How does the Old Testament begin? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. How does the New Testament end? A new creation, a new heaven and a new earth. So if you look at the beginning of the Old Testament and the end of the New Testament, you have creation bracketing the whole Bible. So what's the whole Bible about? God redeeming the fallen creation into a new creation. God redeeming his created beings, us, into new creations in Christ.
I think Suzanne had a comment.
Okay, but that gives you a context of the whole book. Yes, Suzanne?
Yes. To do that first question too, it gave me a different picture of God. And that is, when you read Genesis, he did this the first day and said it was good. As if Now, what am I gonna do for the second day? And what this says is that he has this broad view of history
Yeah.
that we can only
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah.
And that he started all of these things really early so that we would know he is God
Yeah.
and that he has his plan.
Excellent point. God has, you look at the Old and New Testament, God has a broad view. Creation here, it falls, it gets corrupted. But you go to the end of the New Testament, creation, a new heavens and a new earth, and we are new creatures in Christ. And that's the whole broad picture. And now today, remember this with all that's going on in our world. There's a lot of stuff going on right now, isn't it? It can be very depressing. Remember, God is still in this timeline, and he's still moving it toward a new creation. And that's why I don't despair, no matter what's going on. Now, creation, in the beginning, Genesis 1:1, God created the heavens and the earth. Here comes Jesus. What does it say about Jesus at the beginning of John's Gospel? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things were made through him. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. Jesus is in Genesis 1 and 2. And he's at the beginning of John's Gospel. And it's at the end in Revelation. It's all Jesus recreated. So you see, what Carol and I really were eager for all of us to grasp today, and this introductory lesson is this broad view of this unified view of redemption that God is doing through the Bible. And Carol made a really good point when she said we pick a verse here, we pick a verse here, we pick a verse. That's okay, because we need certain verses to help us through. But we have to get beyond just picking a verse here and there and see the whole sweep of it. And that's what we're doing in the course. Okay, question number 2. Carol took number 1 there. For you foodies, how is reading only the New Testament like only eating a microwave meal compared to enjoying a long simmering stew of both the Old and New Testaments? Kind of relates to question 1. But anybody here want to try an answer to that? Julie?
Well, what I find by studying the Old Testament is, as you were saying, I don't despair about now. Things were bad in the Old Testament. You know, they had really a lot of trials and things to overcome. And yet God was sovereign then and he's sovereign now. And just by seeing that whole timeline of God being sovereign and yet things happening, gives me, when I see things happening here, I can go, okay, well, I know God solved the problem back then. He's going to solve the problem now.
Right.
You know, that we just have to trust him and we can see that by seeing the history behind us.
Excellent. Thank you. Another point about, I mentioned creation, and new creation tying the whole Revelation together. Here's another thing. In Genesis 1 and 2, it's built on the number 7. 7 days, 7 this, 7 that. Right at the beginning of the Bible, the first chapter is built on the number 7, the number for perfection. Remember Matthew's genealogy too, 3 sets, 4. But in the book of Revelation, the last book, is built on the number 7. There are 7s all through the Revelation. You can't read Revelation correctly without understanding there's a structure of 7. And 7 is a number of perfection for God. So again, 7 here in Genesis 1 and 2. 7 all through the book of Revelation. There are many 7s. And it's a way God is telling us, I'm in control. 7 here, it's going to be even a better 7 over here. So keep the faith. Keep going. See, that's the total picture that this course wants us to get.
Jen,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just...
I
think that one of the things, because it compared like having something that simmers for a while, like with the Old Testament, you hear all the background and the culture, like you're saying with the numerology
Yeah.
of the Israelites, and you have all that information of why in the New Testament they were looking for those things. Like if you have the Old Testament, you have all the flavors and the parts of the cult, at least it's what we can glean out of it, the cultures and the reasons why they felt the way they did about things.
So understanding that culture of the Old Testament helps us understand the New. Remember that all the writers, except one of the New Testament, were Jews. They all knew the Old Testament, and the Old Testament just gets woven into those New Testament books. Who was the one who wasn't a Jew? Great question. Luke. Luke was a Greek doctor. Okay, but all the others were Jews. Okay, so there's this. So this is, I think we're dealing with number 2. How is reading only the New like only eating a microwave meal compared to enjoying a long simmering stew of both the New? Okay, you see, I think we're kind of answering that question now. Then 5 minutes. Sandy.
Food, subject seriously.
Okay.
That's it. Hard to be nourishing.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, that's right. When you read through all this and get to the end of that section, that's what in mind.
Okay, so a cursory reading means maybe you're not digesting it, right? Okay, that's a plug to do your homework before you come find this. Yeah, gotta do some digesting first. All right, now in the next 5 minutes, any other questions or comments from just the lesson today on this one redemptive story? Anybody, anything? Any insights you want to give the class, Grace?
Yeah, number 40 days or 40 days, Noah,
40 days and 40 nights, the flood.
and then 40 years going through the wilderness.
40 days, Jesus. Oh, yeah, 40 years.
Years, and then 400 for exile. Is there something about 4?
And 40 days, Jesus was tempted in the wilderness.
Yes.
So 40s are
Is there
running
something
through.
about 40?
It's not. I'm not good at math. That's not a multiple of 7, is it?
No.
Okay, good, Julie.
40 is about wilderness, like just that going through despair and things like that.
Yeah.
Trials.
Yeah.
40 represents trials.
Oh, I told you about 7 in Genesis 1 and 2. Revelation built on 7s. The Psalms, the very middle of the Bible almost. In Psalm, I forget what the Psalm is. It's built on 7s. One of the Psalms is built on 7s. Okay? Just a way of God saying, I got it. Don't worry about it. I got it. Okay? So we are going to have an exciting time of learning the old by the end of May and the new next September. And I forgot to tell you that there'll be at the end of May, there'll be a written exam. I made Janet real nervous. I told her this would be a written exam. So for next Sunday, Carol, I'm sorry. You need to have anything? Are we missing anything here? This plan is first lesson.
Well, you kind of closing comments about where we're headed. At this point, we've gone through the misconceptions about the Old Testament in January 4th, about that was enlightening about the thing in general. And now we've looked at what the big picture is going to look like as we work through it. So next week we shift gears a little bit and we're a little bit more focused, and we'll start out with creation. And maybe we'll answer the question that bugs my time. How did he do all of this? Why did he create us? All we do is betray what he wants us to do. We stumble, we fall, and he grants us grace. Why? Don't expect us to come answer that. Those are the kinds of things that we'll be talking about and discussing next week.
Thank you, Carol. Carol's going to close in prayer in just a second. So remember, have a book, bring a book. If you don't have a book, Julie's the person to see with the financial arrangements for it. The big book will really enrich your study, and I don't know, ordering the timelines, they need that on their own.
Yeah, I would just go to the site and order whatever you'd like for yourself, because it's hard to really orchestrate for everyone. Those things.
Suzanne, you have a
No, I just got the study book, so we don't have the questions in the study book. Can we find them online? I haven't looked at mine, study questions.
We got ours on Amazon.
Yeah, no, she's seen just the question.
They got the big questions, because you're doing this, they don't have the study book.
The one we looked at today, you know.
I don't think so.
See?
I think you have to get it from someone that has a book.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know any way of just getting the questions themselves.
Okay. Question answered, Suzanne?
sure.
Okay. All right. Hey, thanks for coming. I won't probably be here next week, but it's 50-50 chance. But Carol will, most 50-50 chance Carol will just leave it next week. And I'm going to honor time with my son. Carol, I'm going to tell you, your it's a playoff game.
It's like the World Series.
It is. Well, not that's the plan. Oh, Kristen's got it.
This is kind of unrelated. I just want to make sure everybody can hear okay because the class is so big, because if not, I'll get Brian to set up a microphone to amplify your voice.
Maybe that would be a good idea.
Kristen,
Be a good idea.
okay, all right, I'll get Brian to set up a microphone for you back to you.
No, I can't hear okay.
I know, but not everybody hears the background.
I know there's like a chat payments.
I know, they couldn't hear earlier.
Sound of.
Oh,
So I think that's, but she's.
Well, we're grateful for our technology.
Yes, and you have to.
and Julie's the go-to person for books and maps and all
Yeah.
that stuff. I understand that. That's Julie. Carol?
Well, we can very closely pray for Julie's efforts to be home. Dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to you. We're so grateful for all you've given us, wisdom that is there for us. We can dig into these Old Testament books. Thank you so much for every single person in this room that people have committed to spend the time and energy to absorb all the wisdom that you provide for us. Please keep every individual in this group safe and healthy through the week so that they can return. Please be with God, with young Gordon and I. Help us have the wisdom and insight to convey what you would want these people to know. Thank you again. Thank you for the church and all of the support that they provide, the technology. Please bless the technology for us and keep everything safe and content. Help us to bring to the people here a way to develop a deeper understanding of the scriptures and a deeper, closer, more personal relationship to you.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah, I'm just going to hold down. Yeah. I'm just a second. Can you let me, I want them to.
Yeah, because they can't see yours. Because I went,
Thanks, Cheryl.
because I saw that print like, and they were trying, they're not, yeah, they're not. So they did because of me. Yeah, so, because the computer wasn't working for a while, came to task before, and like,
Do we need to order it? You need to figure out how to make the sound.
TV. Yeah, because in fact, as far as I know, if it goes to the speaker, the people that are watching online, yeah, you can see what
Julie,
Brian,
this is Phyllis.
but
We could hear.
Thanks. Just unmute yourselves,
We
right?
could hear the
I
clap.
think you can
Just a second. It's loud in here. I have to try to
Okay.
get.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give Brian the mic.
Okay, you couldn't hear the video, right?
Correct.
yeah. Yeah, and
Sorry, we'll have to
um,
figure out, we had to put in a supplemental, um, um, speaker. And so then it had to go through that speaker. So then it didn't come out, I guess. We learned that midway. We could see that you were struggling a bit. So sorry about that. But we'll get that fixed for next week. The videos are available online, so you can always just go to YouTube and pull up the video, or on Casket Empty. They have the videos as well. But the first one was just an introduction, but we'll make sure we get that corrected for next week. But you could hear Gord and Carol all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's what I just was hoping Carol's voice covered. We've got this sort of as close as we can to the speakers. So, but if, sorry about the video today. If you want to go back and watch it, I wouldn't bother because it was just an introduction, but, you can go on and see it on YouTube or on the website. Anything else?
So you just look it up.
Yeah, you can just look it up.
Yes.
You can go to YouTube and look up Casket Empty Old Testament, and she has all of her videos there. Or you can hit empty.com to its actual website and look at teaching videos, and all the videos are there as well. But normally when we have shown videos before, it worked, but I think maybe we just have to make sure it's supposed to go through the television and then you can hear it too. But I think what we did wrong was we plugged it in before we turned on the volume. And I think if we had turned it on with the volume going at first and then plugged it into our computer, I think it would work. We're going to test that and just make sure we've got it for next week.
It's good.
Okay, well, thanks for being here. Sorry it was challenging, though. Take
All
care.
right.
Bye. Oh, no, we don't need to be. Oh, yeah, you're right. Thank you.